I
We
did.
need the car
But it does, okay,
to be electric, then we can have,
Solar,
still have
solar
fun.
powered.
Okay,
I have it finally on.
I arranged for a group outing.
can you let me in?
Yep,
Stream
it's
sample.
slowly but surely letting people in. It's giving me one at a time.
Yeah, don't tell Julie, she'll shame me.
Actually, it doesn't say you're there.
For what?
I said she'll shame me for using this.
I'm not shaming anybody, just saying. We don't need to
You
promote
still have a guest spot on there.
Yeah.
Well, the video leader.
this winter.
What? You have a date.
My friend is getting one of those also. Waiting for it to arrive list.
Yes.
Yep.
Let's do a sound check. Can those online hear us?
Yep. Karen's
Thumbs up from Karen. Hi, Karen. I don't hear your audio though, Karen. Do you need to unmute her or something?
No. So she's
Hello.
unmuted.
It should work, Karen. Can you try?
Testing, testing. Testing. I'm gonna have someone out.
Here we go, try again.
Testing. Hello.
I hear you now. Excellent.
Laptop.
Okay, good.
That's great. I think so. Okay, just a quick note before we start, we're setting up our meeting without Yulia Hendrickson, our executive assistant. So thank you for bearing with us as we're starting 5 minutes late. Everyone all set?
I don't think. so.
No.
Okay. Continue with them.
Emily's computer is running our Zoom and she doesn't have a plug-in, so we need to figure that out.
Yeah, it auto records. You want to move over here? Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
you
if
ran
you-
it straight across here.
You moved by me, well, see, she has to be
No.
connected to the
Right.
video.
Would that run to here? No. Look at that. Yes, that will get there. Thank you. All right, there we go.
Good evening, directors. Thank you for coming tonight. Appreciate your time. Good evening, Karen Lindsay. Nice to see you virtually. Thanks for dialing in.
Yeah.
And good evening to the members of the public joining us online. I will now call this September 28th, 2023 meeting of the Twin Cities German Immersion School Board to order. Let's begin with our mission, vision, and values. The mission of the Twin Cities German Immersion School is the innovative education of the whole child through German immersion. Our vision is andere hören, andere sehen, weltoffen denken und handeln, educating multilingual world citizens who hear others, see others, and think and act with an open mind. And our values are curiosity, kindness, challenge and support, intercultural engagement, and community. Director Hartman, would you read our land acknowledgement tonight?
We acknowledge
Recording in progress.
I just got it.
We acknowledge and appreciate that TCGIS is located on Wapakute, Dakota traditional, ancestral, and contemporary homeland near Lake Metawaka in the land now known as Minnesota. Our presence here is linked to generations of Wapakute stewardship over the land, as well as to the historical and ongoing injustices of settler colonization that impact Indigenous people to the present day. We are committed to understanding our role in this legacy and to educating ourselves and our community about Indigenous history through continued mindfulness and engagement in and outside the classroom.
Recording in progress.
All right, thank you, Thank you, Director Hartman. Let's conduct the roll call. Director Albers.
Here.
Director Alcatute here. Director Aberhard.
Here.
Director Hartman.
Here,
Director Hyde.
Here.
Director Kritzinga.
Here.
Director Condobbs is absent. Director Wright. Director Smaka is going to be late as she's dropping off her German exchange student at the airport. Director Tesfasis is absent and Director Yemenibab is absent. All right, we do have a quorum. The first item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there any item on the consent agenda that needs to be removed for discussion? If not,
Be removed.
yes, so we approve all of the items under the consent agenda at once. If something needs discussion, we can take it off. Hearing none, I'll ask for unanimous consent to approve the consent agenda. Any objections? All right. Consent agenda is approved. Our next item on the agenda is open forum. And we don't have anybody here ready to address the board this evening. So we will move on from open forum. All right, Director Cleansing. Is your guest online? I'm muted.
I'm not seeing him, but I know he's ready to be here at 7 or 6:45, so I just texted him that we're ready.
Perfect. Is there any part of the director's report you want to start? In the meantime,
I could get going until he hops on. That's not a problem. So you want me to present my screen?
yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. So an update on the enrollment right now, and I know Nicole Crashell is on here, so she could probably speak to any more details. This is actually up to 588 as of today. We've stayed pretty steady over the last year. Try to get rid of all these little screens here that are on my screen here. So we're at 586 at the moment. We still have the same open seats in kindergarten with first and second grade full and a couple spots in third through fifth, and then sixth grade is another area where we have a lot of spots, and eighth grade is full. but mostly because we don't take students in at 8th grade. Trying to advance, there we go. Summary of the key financial indicators. Right now, our original budget was for 611. We're still at that budget. We're gonna do a new working budget. We just set up a meeting to put that together on October 9th. The school's original budgeted net income for the year has a balance of 3,542, which probably won't be enough to cover the gap between 611 and 586. So we'll be looking at where we can trim some of the more discretionary funding or in the budget at this time. Projected days cash on hand is at 81, it's above the 60-day minimum for bond covenants. And then the projected debt service coverage ratio at the end of the fiscal year was 1.07, which is above the 1.0 that meets the minimum bond covenants. As I said earlier, the approved budget was done, voted on 6/27/2023 with projected cash on hand at that time of 93 days. And we talked about the $3,542 surplus. The way we got to that was by applying $40,000 of the ERC funding to balance that budget out. But we're still going to have to either further eat into that ERC money in the short term or make some cuts, and it's probably we're gonna have to do a combination of both. Some of the things we're looking at is reviewing and reducing discretionary spending, including some of the things in the technology budget and the supply budget. This is mostly like office supplies, furniture supplies, those kinds of things. Eliminating the kindergarten German immersion specialist position that we talked about last month. Revising substitute teacher process to build an internal list of substitutes, which I expect to save us around 40%. We went over budget on substitutes last year by almost 50%. Closely prioritizing and monitoring spending, which is something that sounds like a no-brainer, but that most of the spending we've been doing, we haven't really monitored it until after the fact. And what we're trying to do now is put some processes in place where we're looking at the budget before we make the approval instead of looking at it after we've made the purchase. And then directing one-time revenue to one-time projects that do not require maintenance. You're going to hear in a little bit from a potential person who can help with recruitment. And the recruitment priorities, though, in the meantime, while you're considering working with that group, I've already talked to Paige, who's our new community outreach director. And we're working in concert with Nicole Kreschel to engage in the following 7 priorities. One of them is to update key promotional materials, which we plan to get some of those done by October 2nd, so that there's a piece that can be in hand for people at events that's updated. We're working on digital media updates where we have a stronger presence in the digital media space so that families can share out some of the great things that are happening at the school, and that we give them some quick tools and resources to do this as much as possible, since word of mouth is the #1 way that charter schools grow their enrollment. We're also increasing the community outreach events and then increasing our planned or our preparation for those to make sure that we tie in a piece of the recruitment strategy to those community outreach events. We all this is in concert with supporting our growth of a that should say word of mouth, excuse me, word of mouth campaign, where we help family and friends spread the word on some of the really neat things that happen. I just think it's amazing that you have the engagement that you do of the parents to host capstone students for the last 2 weeks, and then put them on a plane and then get over here and be on the board. And we really got to get the word out, just what a great adventure it is to be a Twin Cities German immersion. It's truly a broadening of the perspective for students and everybody involved. Strategy 5 is intentional recruitment of events at the school. So not just the ones in the community, but also inviting some folks and friends and family into the school. And this would be where we're also working on some open houses. And then strategy 6 is we're coordinating with enrollment, the student data coordinator, on a lot of things, so that once the recruitment happens, there's a seamless way that it gets handed over to the enrollment coordinator. And we're also hopefully gonna at some point coordinate with recruitment consultants, and you'll hear more from that person today. All of these things are things that are in process at the moment, and but I just wanted you to know what our strategies were. Like the details are, you know, could keep us here all night, but I wanted to give you the top 7 priorities.
Thanks for sharing those. Your guest is here if you'd like to switch
Okay.
over to his presentation.
Sounds great. Yep. I'm gonna escape here. Need to stop sharing my screen. Stop share. There we go. All right. Well, this is Lyman Millard or Millard. Sorry, Lyman. I know your first name, how to pronounce
There
it.
you got it right the first time.
Okay, great. I met Lyman through my work with Charter Source, and he's worked with a number of schools in the area on their recruitment of students. But he also works nationally, so he sees a lot of trends and really understands what works best and what doesn't. What I really do like about what Lyman's group does is they work with the school community to help see their family and friends and their community as the asset that it is for the school. The whole true reason why the school is here is to really connect with the family and friends and the word of mouth campaign. So it's not all the big flashy, showy marketing stuff you might see at the Super Bowl, but rather how does a school naturally and organically kind of grow their enrollment through the tried and true word of mouth campaign. So with that, I'll kind of turn it over to you, Lyman, to share out what it is you do. But that's why I wanted to bring him to the board, because I think that for an area where, or the point of where Twin Cities German Immersion is at right now, where they've had such a strong success with enrollment simply by just existing, it might have to be more of an effort and at this point. And I think that some of the things that Lyman's group can bring us will help set up Twin Cities German Immersion to do these things into the future. And some of them are things that naturally happen at Twin Cities German, and some are things that need to be kind of curated a little bit more than they are. But it is, I think, could be a good fit. And so I want him to share out a little bit what happens or what he does. So, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. And thank you guys for the opportunity to talk to you tonight. I've been in the charter school sector since '99, on a founding team of a school here in Cleveland, Ohio, one of the first schools. So I know what it's like to start a school and to build it up. And we eventually formed a network of schools in Cleveland called Breakthrough Public Schools. And I don't know, somebody had the crazy idea of opening 11 schools in 7 years, and that was exhausting, but also an amazing experience. But similar to, I think, what has been going on in the Twin Cities, we were expanding rapidly while our the community that we were looking to serve, unfortunately, was contracting, and there was also a ton of competition from other significantly less reputable charters. The district was slow to close down schools and neighborhoods that were emptying, and so those few years were a real challenge from a community engagement standpoint, from an enrollment standpoint. But we, through trial and a heck of a lot of error, started to put together some key elements of what turned out to be a very successful enrollment campaign. And then when Breakthrough finished growing, we started getting a lot of calls. We were part of a national funding portfolio through an organization called Charter School Growth Fund, and we had started getting calls from schools around the country that were having kind of problems or challenges that we just happened to experience in Cleveland a few years before they did. And saw that, what we had built at Breakthrough was really in demand around the country. So started Bloomwell Group. It'll be 7 years in January. And Breakthrough was my first client, so I was very excited with that. And then Charter School Growth Fund was our second one. And the reason why I bring up that relationship is for those first few years, had the opportunity to manage the Charter School Growth Fund's enrollment community of practice. So not only do we have the direct experience of knocking on doors in pretty much every neighborhood in Cleveland, but also really learning the leading practices from some of the highest quality charter organizations around the country. And over the last several years, we've worked in almost 30 states in the District of Columbia. We probably managed about 150 enrollment marketing campaigns around the country, including several in some work in Minneapolis with Great Schools Minnesota. So have a lot of experience in the Minneapolis market for sure. But while we do have a lot of experience, what I like to really emphasize is anytime we work with an organization, it is absolutely a collaboration, right? I see our role is bringing leading practices, bringing things that we, have honed over years of experience in various communities. But the folks around that table and the folks in that school building and across your community are the absolute experts on what makes Twin Cities German Immersion School such a great asset to the community that you serve. And so what we try to do is sort of take a lot of the real expertise and and really love for what it is that's going on in that building every day, and especially for the kids and the families in that building every day, and then bring our experience and together craft a plan that really speaks to what's unique about your school, that speaks in the unique ways that your community speaks, that addresses the concerns that are why families are looking for a school like yours, and put together a very specific, actionable plan with very specific metrics and milestones and benchmarks, et cetera, and try to be very clear in terms of our role in supporting it. But at the end of the day, this is your community, and we're here to serve you guys. Karen knows this. I'll always give you my best thinking, and if I'm not so sure about something that you guys want to do, I'll always push back. But at the end of the day, this is your school, this is your community, and I see our role as bringing our best thinking to the conversation, but executing on your vision. In terms of the general strategy, I really like to work from the inside out. I think when most people think about marketing, and I was certainly guilty of this the first year we tried to run a student recruitment marketing campaign back in 2010. We're like, yeah, bus ads and billboards and all that expensive stuff. And it turns out that those aren't particularly effective. It can be fine for raising awareness, but what we've learned over the years is that it really, the most effective recruitment campaigns start inside your building and start with your families. I mean, they're already having those conversations over coffee or in backyards or playgrounds or barbecues. And so we first and foremost look at how is it that we can equip families? How can we really energize those conversations? How can we give families tools to be really effective ambassadors and reminding them that, hey, we need your help with very specific, discrete activities. Going out from that, if you're sort of like one level out, is community. A school that's been around as long as you guys have has a lot of rich community partnerships. But I would also suspect that there may be some other partnerships that could use either renewing or cultivating. And so we really try to work with the leadership and put together a sort of a community asset map, and then develop prioritized plans for engaging those community partners, so that the partners that are working, most closely aligned with your mission and with your community are the ones where we're spending the vast majority of our time, effort, and energy on. But that folks that are maybe a little bit further afield we're still connecting with them on a regular basis. The whole focus of that is really just forming long-term relationships and mutually beneficial relationships. And then finally putting kind of marketing tradition, what we call marketing on top of that. And that happens in two different ways, typically. One is very targeted marketing. So rather than kind of the spray and pray approach of throwing a bunch of stuff out there and hoping that people respond to it, we really try to build a very targeted group of folks that we're going to be reaching out to in very specific ways. So we have access to a very sophisticated marketing database that can actually get a little creepy, if I'm honest. It has about 700 different data points pulled together from both public and private data sources. And so we're able to develop a really specific targeted marketing list for, it really depends on, this is sort of the collaborative piece in terms of the ways in which we would use that data, whether it's, a handful of targeted mailings, whether it's, some more direct outreach and door knocking and whatnot. But we also take that data and we're able to load it into platforms like Facebook and Instagram. Given how sort of, given that your reach goes beyond a specific neighborhood, TikTok may be an avenue that's available to us. The targeting isn't quite as specific as it is with Facebook and Instagram. But anyway, we could take that data so that we're making sure that the people that we're reaching in some more direct outreach tactics are also seeing our digital ads. And then our approach to digital ads is really build awareness, generate interest, and convert interest into leads. So our goal would be to be sending Karen and her team as many leads as possible. And we usually use, what we have found is most effective at that is video testimonials, little 30-second clips of parents, especially your moms, talking about why they love this school and the impact that it's had on their kids and their families. And folks that watch those videos, we're able to then retarget them. We're able to follow up with them with ads that push them to the enrollment section of your website. And then we also run, anyone that takes any sort of action from there then starts getting ads that could push out content if this makes sense to you guys. So, what does it mean to be in an immersion program? If you're considering an immersion program, here's like an immersion program school choice guide, a kindergarten choice guide, free resources to families where we get their name, email address, phone number. Karen's team would get those instantly, and then we also could track those in terms of leads. And then we also have ways of automating some of those responses. I know it's that you guys don't have the biggest team there, so some of those initial responses, we could certainly set up automations, and that you guys are getting alerts the whole step of the way. The idea is really to just try to kind of identify a short list of folks that we can follow up with, and try and get in for a tour or try and get in for an event and see just kind of the amazing things that go on in your school. And I'm guessing that the vast majority of families that come and visit are going to sign up. And so, some of that is, working with the team to kind of create some of those opportunities, or just, be pushing tours. And then we will provide some pretty regular, monthly reports on how those ads are doing, key performance indicators around how big our audience is, how often we're reaching them, what the audience is doing with that, and how much traffic we're generating to your website and how many leads we're generating. So I probably threw way too much at y'all. But I'm happy to answer any questions. If visuals are helpful, I have, our enrollment playbook, which I can either run through or I can send a link to you. If you guys want to take a look at that later. But I'm
Lyman,
happy to.
Can
have a
you share a
conversation.
little bit, Lyman, about what the success rate looks like in terms of ability? Are we talking like 1%, 2% of the, increases, or what's the average?
Yeah. You know what? I would say that as with so many things in life, you get out kind of what you put in. And so I wish that I could just fill schools with running Facebook ads and Instagram ads. But unfortunately, that's not how things work. So I would say that when we have partnerships, where we have a really strong on the ground component that we're helping, support, and we're helping direct, and providing with resources, print materials, other marketing materials. And then we're also supporting them with those digital ads and the direct marketing. Our success rate is very high, 70-80% in terms of folks hitting the goals that they want to. But we have engagements that don't quite hit that mark, and oftentimes it's just we're not, for various reasons, not able to get the sort of on the ground effort to match some of the digital pieces. Especially given that what we see, that inside out, I mean, engaging families is so critical.
So one of the reasons I asked that question in front of the board and is I have seen what Lyman sees, not just even when Lyman's involved, but in all the schools I've been in. The schools who really want to increase their enrollment, when it's a concerted effort across the families and the staff, and not just left to one or two people, not just left to one or two events, but literally is a real comprehensive push with all hands on deck, then you do see that increase that you were looking for, probably as much as 3 to 5% increase in enrollment. That said, and so that the reason I brought this up is I don't think I'd bring this to some schools because I don't think they have the capacity and they don't have the drive to do it. But I do think Twin Cities German Immersion does. You've got amazing family engagement and all the different committees and councils that are happening. A lot of the culture of the family support for this school should be selling the school alone, just because of how many people are so committed and engaged to the K-8 experience here. And so, and I think it has sold the school for a really long time, but now there just has to be a couple, we've even talked about some neighborhoods we would like to draw populations of students or enrollment from. And I think that's going to take some different marketing techniques and slightly more coordinated effort in different avenues. So I do think there's a good synergy here between this, and like I said, I wouldn't recommend it to all schools because it really does mean that the school has to be committed. Otherwise, the ads alone don't work, but the ads combined with the community effort does work.
I have a question or two. Can you hear me fine?
Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Director
Awesome.
Hyde.
You mentioned being able to share some sort of materials.
Yeah.
What was that? What would you be able to share again? At a future date, not right now.
Probably what would be most relevant is our enrollment playbook. I could also I can just drop it in the chat here. This is on our resources page. If you're more of a video person, I just did a series of videos. You're probably sick of hearing me talk already, so maybe I'll just share the enrollment playbook. But if the videos would be helpful too, I could do that. All right. So
The videos are on your website, Lyman, so they can definitely see those. Yeah.
They are. So that's the link to the resources section. The first piece is our enrollment marketing playbook.
And like, can you just email it out? I think you're the only one that gets the chat.
Yeah. There's
yeah,
also
thanks.
There's some other presentations there too. From the National Charter School Conference, I just did one at the Texas Charter School Conference about shifting demographics. That actually is something that I'd be very happy to talk to you about, Karen, just in terms of 0 to 9 population and where we're seeing shifts in Minneapolis and other places. So I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Rich.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for sharing that. I look forward to going through it in the coming weeks. Looking at this, the stuff you put in the board packet, Karen.
The scope of work.
Yeah, the scope of work. It says investment $1,500 per month plus advertising. Just do you have a ballpark guess on both what advertising budget would look like? Even if you got scenario A, B, C, how aggressive we want to be. And then for $1,500 a month, is there like a minimum that's required or a minimum amount of months that you would suggest to see an impact?
Yeah, both really good questions. So the first question is, so I mentioned the enrollment community of practice that we're still a part of. So we've done a annual study of schools and networks across the Charter School Growth Fund's portfolio, and looking at the marketing spend per new student enrolled, and the range in that community, and we see this align pretty well with the schools that we've been working with over the last few years, is between $100 per newly enrolled student and $250 per newly enrolled student. You guys have, you've been around for a long time, so so that's helpful. And being a school of nearly 600 students, I believe is what I saw on the slide earlier. Also, that both of those things work in your favor in terms of bringing that down. We can scale effort. We can scale what we're doing sort of on our side up or down to, based on your budget. But what I tell schools is sort of like unless you're part of sort of a big network, generally we see it on the higher end. And if we're going to scale down that cost to meet budgets, which we can do, it just means that we're going to have to be even more aggressive on the ground. The good news is like the return on the investment of dollars is very high, but it just, you know, it's just more time instead of money.
And Lyman, I just want to point out to the group that you had offered us that same
Right.
scope of work at 1,200 per month.
That's right. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, we had offered that at a discount for you guys.
So, and is there a required amount of time then? And
I mean, there is no required amount of time, and our contracts always have a 30-day kind of escape clause. That makes sense. It
so-
takes, yeah, I'm sorry.
oh, so like minimum 2-month investment, but yeah, how long do you want to see something? Or to see
Yeah, I mean, like
your involvement be to actually see an impact?
so we take time to develop a very detailed, specific, integrated plan. And that process, that planning process, which also includes a materials development, usually takes about 4 weeks. We really dig into the data of where your kids are, where they're coming from, put together a sort of a swim lane calendar for every single recruitment activity every single month. We plan out the entire year and try to front load as much of the materials development in. So we're just running the plan. We're not scrambling at the last minute to get that postcard out for the event that we just planned that's supposed to be in 2 weeks. It's like, you know, we certainly are opportunistic and things change when you're dealing with, you know, 600 little people. But for the most part, we try to set that plan out. So it would be, you know, if we were to get going on planning, you know, next week, we'd probably be ready to go to really launch in early November. Most charter schools that we work with, January is sort of more their kind of launch time, but I'm guessing the parents that you're looking to attract are probably making these decisions earlier in the year. So I'm thinking November, December is probably a good time to be a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, what's our enrollment deadlines generally end in February? Or January? So we think October, November, December, January, February. So like 4, 5, 6 months, is that more than enough time?
I mean, we'll definitely see results. It just depends on how, you know, and we'll be able to report results within, you know, it takes about 2 weeks of running digital before you really start to get some metrics you can make decisions on. You guys will be getting, Karen and her team will be getting monthly reports on how our ads and other things are doing. We have benchmarks that we're working towards, you know, mostly it's sort of like a cost per action that we're looking towards. And then, but certainly could do a reassessment in, you know, in February when open enrollment closes, see how things are going, especially compared to how they went last year, and you know, see where we are in terms of your goal. I'm guessing that you guys still, in general, enroll folks later in the year as well. Families are making decisions all the time for different reasons. It has been my own experience coming from a single mom that you know, lower income families don't have necessarily the bandwidth to make some of these decisions earlier in the year. So oftentimes we see families, you know, parents who you know, are FRL parents kind of coming to this decision later in the school year. So if that's something that is a strategic priority, you know, I would say we would probably save some of that budget for a little bit later as well. And in terms of our targeting, again, we can target based on income and any number of different levels. And usually what we're doing is having to over index for lower income families, because most of the schools that we work with, diversity is a value of theirs, and certainly one of ours.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you for your time tonight.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Other questions?
Yeah, I just have one question on content generation.
Great question. Go
There's
ahead.
quite a bit
Great topic.
included in there, and just messaging alone is a big undertaking. So I'm just wondering if you can kind of talk about how you, I mean, talking about a 4-week timeline to start to implement with all the various messaging and strategies that you've kind of touched on. It's aggressive. So just kind of wondering if you could walk through how you make that happen, and what would be required of our team and our staff versus what you and your team kind of own and manage.
Yeah. So we certainly have the capacity and experience to do an entire messaging strategy as part of this work. Our process is sort of, our general process is sort of 3 big meetings. But oftentimes we work with folks who are saying, you know what, we actually really want to revisit our messaging as well. And so that we just sort of, we kind of expand it from 3 meetings to usually about 5 meetings, especially if you wanted to bring in some parent survey data into that. If that is the route that you want to go with, and all of this is part, you know, like, it just extends the planning process. It doesn't, there's no additional fees. The fee is the fee. But we could do what I have found works the best, where we get the highest rate of return, is a series of text message survey questions. So everyone in your parent community would get an initial text identifying, hey, Twin Cities German Immersion, we want to ask you 3 quick questions about your experience. And folks, you know, reply yes to opt in, and then they'll get a series of questions that we would develop in consultation with your team. And what we get back is data around why families chose you, what they like about you, what they tell their own friends and family members about you. You know, if there are any number of questions that we can put in there. We take that data, distill it down, bring it to the team, certainly provide it to the board, and then we can walk through a messaging framework that's in our plan anyway, that really puts the parent's perspective in the center of that messaging development process. And so if you feel like your messaging would be helped by a refresh, that would generally be our approach. What we try to do is find like a really strong core message that's certainly true for families, but also true, you know, across the organization. And then I'm a big fan of the number 3. De La Soul told me long ago that it was the magic number, and I believe them. So we usually like, what are the 3 big priorities for parents, and then how do we articulate that in language that, and this is why I like the survey data too, is because I like to look for like, what are the words that the parents are using to describe it? Because oftentimes it's different than what we as sort of the, you know, folks that have been in education for 24 years now, or even board members who are super close to this, getting that vocabulary can be just as important as the feelings behind those words. And then you'll see it everywhere, right? I'm a big fan of consistency. So the mailer will look like, the palm card will look like the, you know, kindergarten readiness guide, and you'll see that same image and text, you know, in the digital ads. I'm also a huge believer of video, and so, you know, and I understand you guys are, you know, working on a limited budget, so what we usually do, rather than having y'all, you know, incur the expense of flying in our video team, what we usually do is work with folks in the school community, whether it's parent volunteers or school staff, to record some interviews with families talking about why they love their kids' school. And honestly, a lot of times we're just using our phone for those. They're being seen on a phone anyway. They don't have to be super slick, glossy ads to do well. In fact, it's been our experience that oftentimes, like, the ad that looks like it's authentic, the ad that looks like, I think TikTok has done a world of good in this because it doesn't have to have like the big production value. Those don't do really well. But if it's a mom just looking at the camera saying, I love my kid's school because of this, this, and this. So if you guys, work with somebody on your team to record those and send them to us, we edited them, put them down into little packages, and then you can put them on your website, send them around to your own families, ask them to share it. And then we have a whole cadre of really, really great ads to run.
So for other vendors beyond video, do you guys have set vendors that you use, or are we on the hook for finding local vendors to do some of
No.
those things, or?
Yeah, we have we can do, any production that you need, we can do. But if you have a local, like, if you have a community partner that does, great t-shirts and they've been a supporter of yours for years, we're very happy to work with them. If not, we have our own set of relationships that make it super easy. So.
Other questions? Karen, could you clarify how much time of our new communication coordinator would be dedicated to supporting this?
So right now, her full-time job is communications and community outreach and recruitment, which, and this is the priority. Recruitment, she knows, is the priority this year. So we're keeping all of the base communications going, and that's always a priority. But recruitment is a heavy priority. So essentially, she's full-time. And then once the leads get sent in for enrollment purposes, then Nicole Krashell is also a piece of this, picking up the leads and making sure people are enrolled and getting enrolled if they're ready or getting on the list or in the lottery. So that's also a piece of it.
Julie, that's a good question. It kind of made me think, like, so I'm getting a feeling there's almost like an educational aspect to this where, like, we contract with you for 6-9 months, we get a campaign going, and our staff here is going to learn from that, and it's going to kind of get it rolling, and you'll help them, keep it rolling once you're done. Is that correct?
Yeah, happy to do that. I love working with new staffers. I mean, we sort of, like, my own kind of trajectory in this is of fumbling around and figuring it out and making a lot of mistakes and hopefully learning from them so I can make brand new mistakes. So I would be very happy to, in addition to the planning process, and I think our plan, we designed our planning tool to be something that is very easy for schools to update. Oftentimes we'll run our ads on a school's ads account instead of our own, so that when our partnership is concluded, they still have those assets. They still have the targeted audiences that we've built. They still have all the ads that we've run. They still have all those metrics. And so oftentimes, and that's one of the beauties about digital ads, is oftentimes you can duplicate an ad, swap out the photos, and be off to the races. You don't necessarily have to build them from whole cloth. It usually work better when you're taking an existing ad and adjusting it slightly. So for sure.
Yeah, I think that Lyman's group helps build a playbook for our school that's customized to our school that can be used year after year.
Mm-hmm.
Director Kurtzinger?
Yeah, so if I understand this correctly, the school owns the intellectual property here, or owns the videos. Or who
That's
owns
correct.
it?
Yeah, our contract is very specific about the ownership of anything that we're creating.
How many people are on your team that would be supporting our school?
We have 4 folks right now. So there's me, and then there's Rebecca Martin, who is our marketing manager, and she runs a lot of the day-to-day plan management. We have a full-time graphic designer and a full-time digital advertiser, and then we have a bunch of freelancers that we scale up or down depending on how busy we are. But that would be, especially at this kind of the earlier stage of getting everything ramped up, it'd be those 4. But Karen would be primarily interfacing with me and with Rebecca.
Director Hartman?
I have 2 questions. One is a follow-up on the question about who owns the materials, and we haven't seen the contract. I don't know if Karen, you've reviewed it, but in terms of continued use, once you're no longer sort of actively on the project, or maybe, from time to time swoop in and help us, are there ongoing licensing fees or additional costs or anything?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
And then second
Yeah,
question.
you guys have ownership of any of the things that we create.
For us.
You
Okay.
have unlimited use to in perpetuity.
Perfect. Second question, this sounds fantastic in terms of, as I understand it, with the month or so to kind of build up the repertoire of tools and then deploy them and get people interested in, say, November, December. I think the decision-making window is probably December, January, February, given the school deadlines for putting in the school choice applications and our own application for our lottery. So kind of those competing deadlines. That all sounds great. Is there anything in the arsenal that can be whipped up and deployed in the very near term to maybe try to take advantage of some people out there who might have kindergartners that they're willing to kind of switch them early in the process, right? Because as you heard, probably we have a number of kindergarten openings. And I think, you're going to have that small number of people who along the way have a problem and they want to move their child, and that's going to happen. But for everybody else, I suspect the glide path is like some flexibility early on in the school year, and then a real resistance to pulling a kid out kind of mid-year, late in the year. And then they would go into this pool that we're actively recruiting with the decision makers who are deciding in February to put an application in for the next school year. So longer winded than it needed to be, but anything that can be rolled out like right away to kind of target and identify potential kids for this year.
I mean, I think that would be tough given where kind of we are in the timeline. Like if we were having this conversation at the beginning of the month, I think I feel more confident in being able to get something out there earlier, unless you guys already have things that have been developed. I have to think about that in terms of like what we might be able to get up and running sooner rather than later, and see what sort of assets you guys have already, especially if we're going to do a remessaging. I mean, we can certainly, like I'm a big fan of like get it out there and then make it better. So I'd have to really think about that. It's been my experience that for kindergarten, things have to be going really, really wrong for whatever reason, right? And that's like, well, usually when we're working with schools that are looking to backfill in those younger grades, we find second grades much easier to recruit for than first grade. And my theory is that it's easy to have a kindergarten where families are generally satisfied even though their kids aren't actually learning anything. And it's when they get to first grade that things kind of start to get a little shaky. But if you guys are saying, hey, we usually see a big influx in kindergartners, so we need to figure out something, it would just mean that we would have to push out the larger launch a little bit because we would be using our time kind of getting something out quickly. I would, yeah, so that I'd have to think about it beyond that.
Thank you. Appreciate the honest
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to get that from me. I promise you that.
Good.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you, Lyman.
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate
Thank
the
you.
opportunity. Take care, Karen.
Be in touch.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, Karen, do you want to go back to your director's report?
Sure. Yeah. So my goal with recruitment this year, next year, is for us to get, at least stay at 585. That'd be adequate. With a, if we're getting to 590, that's in the right direction. Filling kindergarten is very good. And reaching, adding 25 students would be, an excellent goal. And reaching former enrollment would be fantastic. That's adding another 4% plus 20. So I just want to put these out here because I think it's important for the whole team to kind of have some benchmarks so we can kind of rally around those as we see some success. For example, we're kind of already starting to look at possibly getting to this yellow bar, which would be a success for the team. And so that I just want to put this out there that we do have kind of some benchmarks in our head of what recruitment success is going to look like. Also want to update you, switching gears completely to the MCA data. Next month, you're going to get the more detailed deep dive on where things are at with MCA data. But just to go over a few of the trends that you can see on the report card for this year, we do see increases in math and reading. So as a whole, as a cohort of students, the school's trajectory is going up from where it was last year with exception in science. This is noted, and you're going to hear a little bit more in October from the principal and from Esther and her deep dive into the data as to kind of what there's already plans going on as to how to work with the science trend. But at least we're going back up in reading and math after a couple of tough years post-COVID. MCA proficiency levels are in 2023, it's better over 2022, but not quite caught up with 2019 proficiency rates. And again, there'll be some more breakouts, breakdowns in the October presentation. But just wanted to put this out there. You can kind of see that we had our bar for exceeding that group of kids was a little bigger in 2019, very much smaller in 2022, but we're starting to grow in the right direction again with 2023. Compared to the state this year, we're still outperforming the state, and at the next, in October, you're going to see how we're comparing to our benchmark schools. But I wanted to give you kind of a quick look at where we're doing, how we're doing with math and reading with respect to the state average of proficiency right now. There are 3 teacher task forces right now that are aligned to a piece of the mission. This is something we wanted to bring up from the principal who's on tonight, but she's going to do her principal's report in October. These 3 task forces that our teachers and staff are part of are directly aligned to the mission. There's one on the whole child, one on immersion education, another one on innovative education. They've completed their goals as of the most recent PD day. They're identifying their action items for the year, and you're gonna get more details on that in October. But this is something we wanted to make sure is out there so that you understand that we're really trying to align instructional goals for the year to the mission of the school very, very intentionally. We also are starting our legally required teacher observations this in the week of October 9th. And myself, Catherine Radke, and Elizabeth have split that list up for those observations. Again, next month, you're going to get a deep dive into MCAs, and the principal will be here to do an update in person. We're also going to do an update on the strategic plan milestones. And that's all I have.
All right, thank
Questions?
you. Yeah, any questions for Director Cleansing? I was curious on the MCA chart or the bar graph. I thought we had data for 2021, but it's not shown.
Well, I pulled this off the report card, but I'm pretty
Okay.
sure that the school does have it. So when you get Esther's comparison charts, she'll have that. There's some stuff they don't put on the state report card because they don't want people extrapolating trends that maybe aren't as reliable or valid from a data standpoint. But they but schools, of course, have a deeper data set that they can look at just for their own personal understanding, but it's not necessarily shared with the general public.
Mhm.
So we'll have that for you in October.
Okay. Part of your report is the Q1 report that we need to send to the authorizer.
Okay.
It's due October 1st, I think.
Mhm.
And it's a 45-page report. And I did read through
I
it.
won't post that on the screen.
There's some, let's see. I had some comments on that. If you're ready. Okay.
Ready.
Let's see. Does everyone have access to that report? Or maybe Emily, could you put it in the chat for those online?
Yes.
Because I don't think it was linked in the board packet. Is that the case? Yeah.
Grab that and put it in.
On the 20th.
Yeah, it was sent via email on the 25th.
Yep, I got it. Just want to make sure it's shared.
So do you have a version from the 25th or do you have one that's later than that?
27th.
27th. It's got restricted access. Do we want to
Oh.
unrestrict the access?
Sure.
I think so, if you're able.
Yep, I cannot. I cannot manage access. I don't know who has that.
Yeah, you aren't the
So-
owner, probably.
No, I am
I'll
not.
see if I can. I think Yulia might own it.
And only the. No, being either sharing or only board members have access, I think at this point.
Mhm.
This was a report written about last year is what we were doing the last couple days. So was getting to learn a lot about last year. Let's see.
Were you able to share it, Karen?
I am trying to find, so we got it parsed out to us, and so I'm looking for it in,
I can
The
send it
shared
to you,
drive?
Karen, if that's helpful.
what'd you say?
I can send it to you.
Okay,
It's in the
Yeah.
chat right now.
all right.
The shared access to each other.
I have access.
Yeah, we just don't
Yes,
have
sir.
managing access, so I can't share it to everyone that's here at the meeting. Is the pink thing on the table.
Okay, well, I have a proposal that perhaps the board could give the executive committee authority to review the report and approve the report at our meeting on Monday, which is October 2nd. Which I think should be fine. Okay. Director Kurtzinga moved that motion, so is there a second?
I can.
Thank you, Director Hyde.
And I add that
Motion.
we should have it reviewed before the meeting. And not review it in the meeting.
Of course. Okay, so the motion on the table is to delegate authority to the executive committee to review this Q1 report ahead of our planned executive committee meeting on Monday, October 2nd, and approve it at that meeting. Any discussion?
I had a couple questions. So I did review it. I put in some typos and a couple of comments.
Mhm.
Should I give those additional questions to the executive committee? And then will you connect with Karen or whomever can answer them?
Or do you have questions outside of what you've added?
Yes.
Okay, I think connect with Karen. So that she can
Or-
make edits.
Okay.
Or you can just keep adding them to the document and we can discuss your questions at the executive.
So let me ask sort of an overarching theme question. The title of this report is the 2022-2023 annual report. Should this be the 2023-2024 annual report? Or is this for last school year? Because it also talks forward-looking about what's going on now, what our stats are, and where we're going with them. And I just got confused about the scope.
Mhm.
So for example, in the finances section, it talks a lot about 2022-23 financials and approved budgets and not so much going forward, but a lot of the report talks about the 23-24 school year. So I'm just trying to figure out what the purpose and scope of this is.
My understanding was it was about 22, 23, and because the narrative that we had was to the directions we had, and I had asked this, specifically was to focus on 22, 23. So if there's some inconsistencies there, we can clean those up and keep it focused on 22, 23.
Okay.
Although
So it
in
says
the
Q1.
in the finance section, it does say, talk about last year, but also tell us how your finances look right now. So that one's kind of a combo.
Yeah.
This is a report from the first quarter of this school year, but each section describes what information they would like. And usually it's reflecting back on last school year.
Okay.
So this should say 2023 to 2024. Is that what you think?
Except maybe not. That's the question.
That's my guess. Look,
And I don't know what the 07 is either. Never seen that in our district number.
Yeah, whether we label it this year or last year, it's just up to the authorizer if they want to call it.
Okay.
We can check with them.
But do we start again from scratch in Q2? Or is there a supplemental piece for Q2 to this?
Yeah, each quarter has a template of what information they're asking in that quarter.
Okay.
And we typically start with what was written last school year and update it.
That's mostly what, we did is took last year's narrative and updated it for this year. Or for last year, sorry, 2021 narrative for 2022.
For the Q1 report.
For the Q1 report in 23, 24, yeah.
Okay,
We're not really talking about 23, 24, we're talking about 22, 23.
okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
I agree, it's confusing.
It is. And then it's even more confusing because really Elizabeth was probably the one on it who knew the most of those of us who were contributing to it. The rest of us were writing it from interviewing others.
Okay. So if anyone else, so Lori, I think you could email your comments to the executive committee,
Okay.
because Karen is on that as well.
I think I'm.
And
Can
then
ignore
anyone else that has comments, email them to the executive committee. Okay. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
I,
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. The next action item we have is to designate Karen Cleansing as our Iowa individual.
Official,
Individual authority.
identified
Oh,
official with authority.
There, I wrote it in the agenda. Identified official with authority. Who currently is myself, and it'll make it much more. It'll save a lot of time if we can designate Karen Cleansing in that role, now that we know she's staying for the year. So I'll make a motion to designate Karen Cleansing as TCGIS as Iowa. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Hartman. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. So Karen, I think you need to email MDE and let them know.
I'm on it.
Next item on the agenda is our board liaison verbal reports. So we have our parent liaison, our staff liaison, and our administrative liaison. Director Smaka, would you like to start with your update as parent liaison?
So the only update I have since I was absent from this week's meeting is that they are going to be
Were you able
They
to
did.
attend the parent council meeting last month?
yes, and there was not anything new to report from that meeting.
Okay.
But the parent orientation that we will be supporting is not going to be next week. It will be in November.
Yes. The specific date is yet to be determined. Okay. All right. Thank you. Staff liaison. Director Hyde.
so, no real official report as staff liaison so far. The staff council, I do not think is up and running yet. I haven't seen a first meeting, but I have reached out to see where they're at with that. So you make sure not to miss it. But I can say that I was able to join the first day, that Monday of the first week for new teachers, and the following Monday for the first day of, or 2 Mondays later for the first day of all staff. I got to join those Monday mornings, thanks to admin and the staff for allowing me to be there. It felt really good. And yeah, so I don't have anything real official to say. But I'm trying to be around as much as I can.
Mhm. Thanks for attending those events. All right, I'm the administrative liaison, and Director Cleansing and I have a weekly meeting set up on Mondays for an hour to touch base on anything that is happening that we need to talk about. So we have an ongoing rolling agenda. We both add items to the agenda and discuss it. So it's been great to be able to answer questions for Karen as our new executive director. And I think things are going really well. Any questions? All right. Director Albers is our academic officer, and she is our liaison for the Curriculum Advisory Committee, the Special Education Advisory Committee, and the Wellness Committee. We have an update from you, Director Albers.
Yeah. So first and foremost, the Curriculum Advisory Committee has their tentative dates planned for the year. Be meeting on October 12th, January 29th, and April 29th. Pending any concerns or challenges that come along with that. Of course, we're looking for a 1/3 versus 2/3 engagement in the curriculum advisory committee, so there is a limit on how many participants that are not parents can be a part of the committee, but it looks like Esther Noy is on top of that, so she's looking for as many people as possible. So if you're interested in joining, definitely join. As far as the SEAC, which is a special education advisory committee, the first meeting was this past Monday. However, it was just Andrew Haugen and myself, so it was basically canceled. And as much as we loved our time back, that's not the point. So, without sounding like a person scolding too much, if you're interested in being a part of the special education advisory committee, I know that he would be very grateful to have that input. And the next meeting is in November, so it is a ways out, but we're hoping to put the word back out. He's hoping to specifically email some families to see if they're able to come that night, and hopefully that date will stay the same, but we'll see. And the wellness committee meets next Monday. So if you're interested in joining, you can let Alex meeting in the front office or Elizabeth Saint at any time.
Excellent, thank you. Are those meetings virtual? The SEAC meeting?
Wellness is in person. Curriculum Advisory Committee is currently taking a survey to figure out what's best. I think it'll be online. And SEAC was both. I joined online and Andrew was in person. So I think obviously in person is easier for committees, but we know that with the new advances in Zoom and Google Meets that many are preferring to be online so they can do a little bit more in their evenings.
Okay. Any questions for Director Albers? All right, that brings us to our recess. We'll adjourn for a 10-minute recess. So we'll be back at 8:05. All right. It is 8:07. We are calling this meeting back to order. Thank you for the delicious treats, Emily. That was great.
Yeah.
All right, and we note that Karen Cleansing had to leave the meeting for a family event, so now it's just the board members. All right, we're gonna go through our committee reports and our committee charters. So regarding committee reports, I think just if board members have questions regarding the report, go ahead and ask those. And if the committee chair could present the charter and convince those listening to join our committees, that would be great. So we'll start up with finance and facilities. Director Hyde.
Yes, so our charter has not been reviewed by the committee yet for this year. Because we didn't meet in November or in September yet. But we will be reviewing it at our meeting next Tuesday. Which you should come to if you want to be on the finance committee. We would love to have. Do you want us to look at it or should I present it in October?
You can present it in October. Yeah. All right. Director Hyde, could you give a brief update on the bondholder call that we had?
I can, we had a call last Friday. It was a follow-up call to our last call in, the call we had last year in November. There's a public call with the bondholders. Karen, myself, Julie, Kelly R from Bergen, which is now Creative Partners or something like that. They just changed their name or they got bought. So formerly Bergen, and Kelly G from Charter Source. We're all on the call, and as well as Nick Hagan, our rep with Piper Sandler. The call went very well. We presented our changes to administration, gave introductions to Karen and Kim, and talked about other changes that we had made, and talked about our current partnership with Charter Source, and did an introduction with Kelly about Kelly G. I will say that one of the people on the call made a comment about being excited to see that Kelly Guerreras was helping the school. So that felt pretty good to hear. So then we presented the budget from last year, where we ended up, as I said, it was a follow-up call for the one in November, where we kind of gave what the year was going to look like and the past year. So follow up to that, and then presented those two slides that you saw in the director's report about this current year's budget are pretty much the same information as the slides from that call. And I should have shared, I think I shared the slides with the board. Did I? I think I did. Okay. So you can look at those if you want to see, but overall the call went great. There's a lot of questions about recruitment. And I think Karen being able to speak about the potential of working with that Bloomfeld group, really eased a lot of minds of the people that were on the call. And they thought it sounded like a very reasonable and good thing to do. Karen talked about the efforts for recruitment now as well, like Lori alluded to, or talked about us needing an effort on. So that was the basis of the discussion afterwards. So overall, it felt like a very positive meeting. We'll be doing another one in November, December for this current year.
Thanks for the update, and thank you for organizing that.
Yeah.
All right, any finance questions?
The next finance meeting is on Tuesday. We will be reviewing the preliminary audit numbers from last year and the finance report and supplemental reports from July and August. We will not have a working budget for that meeting yet. That will be in the November finance meeting, and then that will be in the packet and everything for the November board meeting. So we can talk about the working budget then. They're still making all the updates for some of the changes that were made in the past few months to get that all up to speed. Kelly R is doing what she can to get that done in a timely fashion, but she's also dealing with our audit and the audits from other schools. I did talk to our auditor last week and met with them today. It seems like the audit's going really well. And they'd like to be on the agenda for the October 26th meeting to present the audit.
All right, thanks. All right, fundraising and development, Director Wright.
Yeah, so we had our first meeting in September with our core groups of dedicated fundraising subcommittee members. We really just dove right in. looking to meet our $110,000 annual fundraising goal this year and talking about ways that we hope to achieve that. Kind of the synopsis of the conversation is we have 3 subcommittees that we're going to be focusing on this year. Including leadership giving, which is really looking at folks that are already supporting our school through their philanthropy and keeping them engaged. Looking at our fall committee or our fall campaign efforts. And then also, I have to get back to my notes. What was our 3rd subcommittee?
Spring campaign.
Spring campaign. Yeah, to help us implement and execute on that financial goal. So lots of good ideas discussed in terms of how to share the impact of fundraising at our school. Some really fun ideas of looking how to engage a broader audience in our fall campaign, kind of rethinking our tie to give to the max and really making it something that's more focused on our school, like a TCGIS Day of Giving, something maybe with a German phrase to really lean into our identity as an immersion school. And also, of course, tying it to Martinstag, which we know is the German holiday of generosity. So looking at things that our community could do to perhaps support other organizations in our school, some things that are in our community, some things that came up were a food drive or possibly like a coat drive, since the story of St. Martin is tied to sharing of a book. So those things are still in the works, but lots of good discussion around that. Do you want to, is this the time to go over the committee charter or?
Mhm.
Okay. Let me scroll down to page. So we did draft the committee charter for this year. Obviously our biggest objective is to meet our budgeted $110,000 revenue goal. In addition to that, really looking to again create strong messaging around the impact of philanthropy, be sure that we're creating a culture of generosity in all kinds of regards, but making sure that those who support our school through their charitable gifts know that we appreciate it and that they're valued for their contributions, and that they make a difference. Also working to increase the number of people that are engaged with our school through philanthropic support. We want to be able to reach beyond just our current families. And then also exploring new opportunities for different philanthropic giving efforts that still honor the agreement that we have with the PTO. So kind of staying in our lanes. Then we did draft 6 goals that were tied to the strategic plan milestones for the coming year, which are outlined in the charter as well.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the charter or comments, suggestions? All right, I think we'll approve all charters at the end, once we've heard them all. Diversity and belonging, Director Eberhard.
Yes, the Diversity and Belonging Committee met for the first time last week. During our first meeting, we looked at what we accomplished last year, looked at the milestones for this year. We went through the charter. You can see that the charter on page 40 of the board packet. Yeah, there are a lot of things that are rolling over every year in the Diversity and Belonging Committee that are the same every year. We want to keep our affinity groups engaged and active. We are thinking about adding 1 or 2 more affinity groups depending on interest of our community. One of them is around how to be an ally. The other one is finally getting the Modern Families affinity group started. We have a new parent who is volunteering to lead that group. He has some great ideas and he's trying to get that going this year. Other things that are rolling over are the intercultural events in the Rundbrief that I post every week. I've heard feedback that people are looking into those and actually going to those events, and it's helping people. So that's why it's a good time spent for me to keep going. And it's very interesting what's all happening around the Twin Cities because there's a lot. We want to have the Festival of Cultures again this year. We're currently looking for a good date. I proposed a date in February because it's kind of a dead time usually, where not a lot is happening. But I'm still looking for input and other dates if anybody has better ones. New things this year are, or old and new things, is the staff working group that has not met in the last 2 years because of various reasons. Teachers were really busy with other things and didn't have the time and capacity to work on diversity issues in that group. And I have sent out a Google survey and got good response from that, with some good ideas on what specific goals to work with. And we're meeting for the first time in October. And also new this year is the gender inclusion policy that we're working on in collaboration with the governance committee. And we decided that my committee will start a task force that I also have quite a few members already who want to work on that and have a proposal that we can bring to your committee, the governance committee, later this year. Yes, those are probably the main things that I wanted to mention, unless you have any questions or comment suggestions.
Well, it's a great list. It's exciting to see the staff working group back up and running.
Yes.
Awesome. Any questions? All right. Next on the agenda, communication and outreach. Director Smaka.
We had our first meeting on September 12th, and most of the meeting was taken up by looking over our current charter and making edits to kind of align with some of the recruiting we want to do this year. And so it is a working draft of the current charter, and we are going to finalize it at our next meeting, which is on October 17th. In hopes for it to be approved at our October board meeting. We looked at goals and we decided we want to align our goals for our committee with the TCGIS communications team goals, because that just makes sense to support their goals with the work of our committee. We took our subcommittees and kind of condensed the many subcommittees that were in existence last year. And there's still a lot, but we condensed them into advocacy, recruitment, marketing, and outreach, and then TCGIS community relations. So that's kind of our internal, looking at our direct TCGIS community, alumni relations, exploring the school mascot. So how we can take that mascot and apply it to non-athletics as well. And then our final one is community relations. So that would be our external outreach. I think that's about it.
Great, thank you. Any questions on that? All right, next up is the hiring committee. Director Albers.
I think we skipped governance.
Oh, did we? Next up is governance and leadership development. Director Hartman.
Figured we'd get there eventually. So yeah, we met and we reviewed the charter, and we made a few little changes, but I think because our sort of core duties are pretty well defined and keep us pretty busy, there's not a lot of change. We have 60+ policies that need review on a cycle and some related forms that go with those. And then we have a few new policies that are being put in the hopper to address some new things and requirements. So that's kind of the core of what we'll be doing. We will try to get some additional standardization in place just to kind of clean things up a little bit going forward. And anybody who's accessed policies on our website knows that there are different formats out there, and we're just going to try to standardize a bunch of stuff. And then the other big thing the committee does is the nomination committee. So we will try to put together a group later this fall to start the process of identifying candidates to run for the board next spring. So anybody who wants to help out on that can reach out to me. Anybody who's interested in running for the board should start thinking about that. At the meeting on the 18th, we also did a first reading on 5 policies. Won't go over those, but they're in the minutes in the rolling agenda if anybody wants to look at that. And then we finished reviewing and revising a new data retention policy. So this is one of the new policies I just mentioned. This is a policy. Should I go ahead and explain what the policy is, or should I make a motion to approve the policy and then explain what's preferred procedurally?
Let's make the motion and then explain.
Okay. So I will, can I make a motion for my own policy? Well, I'll make a motion to approve policy, it's a weird number. Oh, no, it doesn't. Policy 110, the data retention policy.
Thank you, Director Hartman. Is there a second? Thank you, Director Alders. Discussion. Is this a newly required policy?
It is not.
Okay.
So I'll give a quick overview because everybody should be aware of this, and it will affect all committees as you start thinking about things you're doing. And then it obviously affects the school and administration and anybody who touches data and documents in the school. So what this policy does is it adopts the school district general records retention schedule that is approved for use in Minnesota by Minnesota school districts in accordance with Minnesota law that relates to the retention and disposal of government records. So the general rule is the school has to keep documents unless it has an applicable retention schedule. And even then, we have certain limitations. So once this policy is approved, we will have this retention schedule in place, and then we can we need to retain documents in accordance with the timeframes that are specified in the state schedule, and then we can dispose of records after that. The way it works under the way the law is written, anything not on the schedule that we have and that we want to get rid of, we then seek permission to get rid of it. And it looks like there's a very defined practice or application to do that. So once this policy is approved, we have to notify the State Archives Department of the Minnesota Historical Society. They will acknowledge that we have adopted it as a school, and then we can sort of live by it. And again, the part that's important for people who are coming up with policies or implementing policies is if there's something that you would think of wanting to get rid of or something that you want to keep records wise, if it's not on the retention schedule, we need to develop a policy that says what we're doing with the records. So that's kind of the weird twist here. And I want to, just as an aside, thank Nicole Kroschel and Jesse Whitney for the work that they put in to developing this policy. It has been a long time coming, and it will be a big step forward once it's adopted and they start running with all of the other things that will fall into place once this policy is in place. So. Any questions?
What all falls under records?
Pretty much everything.
So it does not fall in the records.
Duplicates of a record. So if you have your own personal copy and you want to throw it away, go for it. That doesn't. Your personal documents wouldn't. But yeah, so and that'll be part of the interesting implementation of this policy. To figure out where those lines are. And that will be more procedural than in the policy. Some things are very clear. Certain records get kept forever and they never get disposed of. And then other things you know, we must keep it for a certain amount of time. We can keep everything forever, and that is what we have done to date. But that is no longer workable, so.
Any further discussion?
I just want to thank Lori for continuing to work on this, but also Nicole, Crashell, and Jesse Whitney. You know, data both digitally and physically has impacted a lot of their work, and like just mentioned, they're running out of space. So being able to free up some of that space for them is crucial.
Right. All those in favor of approving policy 110, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you for your work, Director Hartman and Director Alders. Okay, that brings us to the hiring committee. Director Alders.
Yeah, we've been meeting on and off, trying to avoid other Thursday commitments like this one. So we've been slowly but surely getting our process set up as we've kind of started this committee of hiring the new executive director. One of the things that we really wanted to focus on though at first is keeping a pulse on the school, in particular how this current administration you know, feels as the school year gets underway. Staff were given a 5-question survey. And this is planned to continue throughout the year to just again, for our knowledge, to keep kind of a pulse on what's going on. And with the info that we got, so it was given out this week, we're looking to basically understand how well or what changes need to be made to just keep the current situation running smoothly. So it's really great feedback. And we'll have more at the October meeting as we further, we haven't had the chance to meet yet to dive through that survey. And so we'll meet next week to discuss it and move forward.
Great, thank you. I'll just add that we did receive 2 proposals.
Yes.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so our deadline was last Friday. And we received 2 proposals for the our RFP. One of them, I had the opportunity to meet with him and just understand where his company is coming from, his consulting firm. Yeah, that too. The RFP was the request for proposals, so we were looking to work with different firms to help us hire the director, much like we did 2 years ago in our search for our director back then. And so we were able to, I was able to connect with Roger from Mighty Consulting, and they put in a proposal for us. And then last Friday, we got a another proposal, a second proposal from the group KP companies. So we'll be looking and reviewing those as well next week. And yeah, excited to see what they have to offer.
Mhm. All right, thank you. Did we have a hiring committee chart?
Yes, you know,
That's in here?
it's in the packet. Obviously, one of our objectives is to hire a new executive director. That's kind of the goal. But we're also looking to make sure that during that process, we're bringing the community in. So looking at the different stakeholder groups, much like we did last time. And then we'll be looking to build a profile of who we're looking for, what our priorities are, using that stakeholder feedback, but also what we see as a board for the new director. And and then be communicating that process throughout. Big things that we're trying to accomplish, of course, are to hire a recruiting firm that aligns with our values to help us find the best person out there. And then build those forums for that input and start looking at making lists of interview questions. So it's all very much in line with what you would expect from a hiring committee, I think, but it's good to have those things outlined in the goals in place so we can continue to have a timeline that makes sense for us and that feels comfortable, so.
Any questions on the charter?
So the final decision of like who we're gonna hire as a consultant or which company lies with the board, right, not with the committee?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm. We plan to have any of the firms that seem reasonable to come and present to the board at a public meeting.
Yep.
Mhm. Okay, moving on, we have the committee of the whole. The board met in this working session on September 14th. To start the meeting, we worked on finishing our review of the strategic plan, which we started at the board retreat on September 9th. So we looked at all the milestones. We split up into 4 groups again, like we did at the retreat, and each group focused on a different area within the milestones. And we're working on aligning the milestones, ensuring that nothing is missed if it wasn't completed in the past, moving it forward so that we can still work on it, and just reestablishing realistic timelines. And then we discussed the idea of the student representatives that I brought up at the last board meeting. And so I would like to make a motion to have the executive committee and the governance committee work together to create a procedure to instate 2 student representatives that would come to board meetings or board committee meetings. Those details are to be determined, but really to be a voice of the students that the board can use in decision making. And we hope to implement that this school year. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Director Smaka. Discussion?
So those committees would work together to kind of draft the job description and the expectations of the process and all those components.
Yep. Mhm. And the application, all the things.
Even anticipated timeline.
I'd like to be able to have applications out at the end of October. If that's possible.
So how would that work with having the governance committee be working on this? 'Cause we wouldn't probably have a full committee meet. What's your vision?
When's your next meeting? On the
The
9th?
I think we said.
It's gonna be on October 9th, but we have a full agenda that we'll need the 90 minutes for.
Okay,
So
And we can't burn 90 minutes kind of talking about what these details would be.
yeah,
can we take? When's our next executive meeting next
it's
week?
on Monday.
But then when's the one after that?
It's the first Monday of the month. Beginning of November.
I mean, I'm happy to meet individual, like just with whoever wants to show up to a separate meeting.
Yeah, that's kind of what
Where
I
we
said.
collaborate on this, and then if a policy grows out of it. that could be drafted and then presented to the governance committee
Mhm,
to approve. And if it ends up being something more like a procedure or an application without a policy, we can kind of go that direction
mhm.
and be flexible, but especially on that timeline, I don't think that works with the governance committee as a whole.
Can we move the timeline out slightly and say maybe have an application available prior to fall break? Or,
Well, that's moving
I
it
meant
up.
Thanksgiving. I meant Thanksgiving,
Okay,
like the week,
yeah.
the
that's sure.
weekend for Thanksgiving. And then we can plan an auxiliary like executive finance or executive governance meeting. And then we can present any potential policies at the November governance meeting. We can vote at a committee of the whole.
I suppose alternatively, we could just set up a task force to nail this out.
Yeah,
Almost do that and then adopt an application is to go through governance. It technically should show up on two board
Right.
agendas.
yeah, but if there's a policy, it's 3 readings,
Two.
2. Yeah, I was gonna maybe propose moving the next board meeting to the week before Thanksgiving, so after. We just have it done by then. But that's a different
You could
conversation.
also do an emergency type,
That's
reading.
true.
If you really want it passed as early as you can, you could read it at a board meeting or a second reading.
That's true. And I
If
think
it's
the
been
only
discussed
limitation,
well,
yeah, and then the only
governance.
limitation is it's only good for a year, so it'd have to be approved again.
Okay, I'll amend my motion to say that the board will create a task force to create the process of having student representatives as board liaisons. Are there volunteers for such a task force? I'll be on it.
I'll be on it.
I can be on it.
Thank you.
I would love to,
You have time?
I would love to be on it if I can find time, so depending upon when the meetings are,
Same.
I will try.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. I've got myself, Lori, Lindsay, Richard, and Kevin as the task force. All right, further discussion?
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Do we want to get input from like the student council or anything on this, or just kind of see how it shakes out once we have it done?
Well, it depends if the student council is formed already. I don't
Yeah.
think it is. But I think the
so, yeah.
task force can figure out
Can
how we
we
want to
reach
do
out
it.
to, okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
Absolutely.
No more comments.
Okay, can I get a second on my amendment?
I'll second your amendment.
Thank you, Director Hyde. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. All right, thank you. And then at Committee of the Whole, we also had our first discussions on the committee charters. So I think the charters that are ready for approval tonight include fundraising, diversity and belonging, communication and outreach, governance and leadership development, and the hiring committee, Committee of the Whole.
Communication outreach, with work in progress, so
Is it a working draft? Okay,
next month.
can
we will
push that out.
finalize it.
okay. Did the charter for executive committee get in this packet?
it is,
It is
it is
fantastic.
top of the charge.
34 or something.
Okay.
23.
I'll add executives of that list. Basically, the executive committee is made up of the board officers, the chair, vice chair, treasurer, and secretary. We can invite one additional board member as needed for consultation and remain under a quorum. The routines are that we collaborate with the executive director and the admin team. We meet monthly and as needed, we discuss critical situations in a timely manner. And our objectives are to provide a forum for in-depth discussion of urgent and critical issues, act as a thought partner and sounding board for the executive director, provide a forum to discuss school management, governance, and oversight, provide the executive director with feedback regarding performance and development, both informally and formally via our mid-year review and our annual review. You can see the list of deliverables and our measure of success. Any questions on the executive committee? Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the charters for diversity and belonging, governance and leadership development, hiring committee, executive committee, and committee of the whole. Is there a second? Thank you, Dr. Albers. Any discussion?
Sorry, can you read your
I
list
think I
again?
missed fundraising.
Yeah,
Fundraising.
yeah.
Yours is ready, yeah. Okay. So I'm adding fundraising to that list. So the list is fundraising, diversity and belonging, communication and outreach. Nope, that's
Nope.
next month. Governance and leadership development, hiring committee, executive committee, and committee of the whole. So basically, the two committees that will approve charters for next month are finance and communication and outreach. Okay. Can I get another second? Second. Dr. Albers. Discussion? Thank you all for your work on these charters. I think it's really great to have a clear vision of what the committee is gathering to accomplish. It helps make sure that the volunteer time we spend and our other volunteers spend is used wisely and will have a strong impact on the school. So thanks for your time in drafting those. All those in favor of approving the charters listed previously, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Last in our packet is our board retreat. As I mentioned earlier, we worked on the strategic plan and updates. But we also heard a presentation from former board member Megan Dayton, who is a senior demographer with the state of Minnesota. And she presented a great presentation on Minnesota demographics and how they have changed and how they may change in the future. And I'm open to hearing any thoughts that the board has for takeaways from that, but I think one of the major takeaways is that birth rates are decreasing quite notably, which will impact our source of future kindergartners and future students going forward. So schools will be competing more for fewer available students. And on top of that, the birth rate for Caucasian or white students is decreasing faster than the birth rate for BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color population. So it makes sense that the work we're doing to reach out to the BIPOC community is quite strategic in ensuring that we have visibility to that community and their kindergartners. Interestingly, she did a search and found where German-speaking families live in Minnesota. And the two largest populations of German-speaking families are in Southwest and Western Minnesota. She found two pockets there. I brought up the conversation again about perhaps developing a virtual school, online school, like some districts have continued. That would be a large undertaking, but something that was discussed as a way to reach out to those families and include them as students. I also found it interesting, all of the slides are in the packet, by the way, for those listening. I found it interesting that she had the historical data of where families came from, where residents came from a century ago, you know, Germany, Sweden, Norway, and then immigration really dropped and was quite minimal for several decades, and now it's rising again. So immigration is picking up, and the top countries were listed. I think it was 7 or 8 countries, and interestingly, Germany was on that list. So somehow Germany is still sending folks to immigrate here.
Yeah, 6th highest on the list.
6th highest, yeah. Do you have the thing?
Yeah, I pulled up.
Can you list the countries?
Yeah, it's Mexico by far. Somalia is the next highest after that, then India, and then Hmong or Laos, Ethiopia, and then Germany. And Germany is the only one of the, you know, when her data went back to the turn of the 19th or to the 20th century, and it was, you know, all the countries you think of, and Germany is the only one that still has a major contributor to our foreign-born country of birth.
Mhm. But yeah, immigrant families seemingly would have a large interest in immersion education as they value knowing multiple languages. And so this helps us identify some groups that we can try to reach out to in our recruiting going forward. Were there other takeaways or thoughts people want to share from that retreat?
I think, you know, obviously the information that we got at the retreat was really profound and impactful and made me think a lot about what our focus needs to be as a school. And now considering this and, you know, hearing from the recruitment firm tonight, I think, you know, probably for more than our enrollment reasons, there's other reasons to kind of get with a company or a group like that and kind of talk through some of these demographic changes and just include that information in a short and long-term strategy for marketing and even community or communication and outreach. I think that committee should be involved in all of that process too, and kind of make a plan using Megan's data. Very timely.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe demographics is just always timely.
I think it was super timely because I heard on NPR like 3 days later, the reports on the demographers reports were released. So I feel like we got a sneak peek, but Megan says it wasn't anything that was proprietary at the time, but that was cool. Yeah, regarding recruiting, I feel like the Communication and Outreach Committee has really done a great job in this efforts to market our school and to reach out to BIPOC communities, LGBTQ communities, and lower socioeconomic communities. That's been a big focus of the committee in the past few years. And I feel like we have a lot of assets kind of that he was describing that we could hand over to let them like use. We have a lot of video footage that's excellent with testimonials. And especially from alumni, I think now that we have alumni that are in graduate school, it's awesome to hear from them and what they're doing with their education. So I feel like we have a really good start. And I guess I agree with Karen that our school is ready for a more concerted. I feel like they would be project managing, and we just don't have the capacity for all of that. So they would add that and of course bring their experience.
They also have access to resources that we just do not have access to in terms of market data,
Yeah,
digital assets, or just a whole host of tools that we just do not have in order to effectively implement that level of outreach.
yeah, good point. All right, any other thoughts on our board retreat? Hearing none, is there any new business? Do you want to bring up your idea of moving the board meeting in November?
I don't really want to propose it yet, but I kind of wanted to see what people's thoughts would be. I don't know if anybody's planning on traveling like the week before Thanksgiving, but I feel like myself and other people I've talked to, it seems the week after Thanksgiving is more the potential travel time. And it's just getting into the holiday season.
So you're traveling the week after our 1 week off?
I mean, that's why I don't want to propose it, because I bought my plane tickets, but that's generally what I do.
Okay,
So the meeting is scheduled when?
The 30th,
November 30th.
so the Thursday after Thanksgiving.
It was also on the 30th last year.
Oh, man,
That's why.
that's Director Hartman's birthday.
I was here last year
Okay,
at the meeting.
I'll make a motion, to move the November board meeting to November 16th, so it does not align with Director Hartman's birthday.
That was joke.
Full reason.
No, that cannot.
Are we still gonna have a committee of the whole meeting and the board meeting then? Is it-
Committee of the whole's on the
My
9th.
question.
On the 9th.
Yeah, I did look at that, the
We can-
committee, the whole meeting's
we can
already the week
cancel that.
before, so, but then we have committee of the whole board meeting Thanksgiving.
So if we did that, we could cancel our committee of the whole the week before. All right. Is there a second to Director Hyde's motion?
Second.
You don't have to.
Seconding just means you want to discuss it. It doesn't mean you endorse it, by the way. Thank you for the second, Director Abraham. Discussion on this?
Would that be too long of a break from November 16th through January 25th then?
Oof.
Just throwing that out there.
We could move it out.
Committee of the whole meeting.
We have committee of the whole on the 14th of December, right?
I canceled that actually, because I try not to do committee meetings in December.
Oh.
But that could be changed.
Still on the Google Calendar.
Find this.
Are we prohibited from having a board meeting? Just
No,
the violence.
I don't think we prohibit ourselves from anything in bylaws. It's more minimums.
We could do December 7th
Committee of the whole or the board meeting.
board meeting
That's the
instead of,
first day of Hanukkah. If it matters.
I'm gonna propose that we table this discussion and come back to it next month.
Yeah,
All right.
fair.
The motion is tabled. All right, any other new business? Hearing none, our meeting is adjourned without objection.
And before 9 o'clock?
At 8:58.
That's Emily style.
Yeah. I was-
All right. Thank you all for attending. Have a good
you.
evening.